Excited to start here. Welcome everyone. We're doing a new edition. So actually this is part of this series. We started affirming with affirmations. Then we action ideas into other vehicles. And that was the action in summits. And now we have these coalitions. And the coalitions are very important for us. And it grows on many things that have happened in the school. And Mario is also doing collectives and for the MR program. So we're at a moment that we feel that the world is shaking and it's showing so many fractures, and the way for the disciplines and intersecting, I would say, fractures and problems and difficulties and violences and forms of exclusion. And the way for the built environment to operate there is acknowledging this intersection of crises that are showing the failure of carbonization, racialization, colonization, modernization, industrialization, extreme capitalism, patriarchate, and all these intersecting realities. It's what basically is cracking now. And we're doing all this to operate in these cracks and to make other possibilities to be possible and to expand the realm of the possible now. And that's not a work that we can do with a master plan or perpetuating systems of absolute power and concentrating power, but rather by patching together things that are very different and that can actually be in disagreements, can be dissonant, can actually dispute with each other. We don't have a nostalgia for absolute power, but rather by how weakness can actually scale up through patching and discordant patching. And that's why these coalitions are so important. We have the feeling that there's knowledge that is growing on this idea of, on these forms of not aspiring to absolute power, but rather to build through dissonance. And that's what this semester we're going to be exploring. And that's what I would defend is probably what is happening at GSAPP now across our programs and in different corners of our school and also different non-centers of the school. This is why your presence here is so needed, so important, and we're so happy to have you here working with us in these coalitions. And we want this not to be just a way of presenting work, but actually meetings when we can build alliances and collaborations. And this is a way to say that this is not just a one-time invitation, but rather an invitation to keep working together with all of us here. As you've been here actually a number of times already, and we've been visiting the work that Raumlabor does, and we hope to do the same with all of you. So with that, I just wanted to open this discussion. We have representation of our programs and faculty and students and researchers. This is a working session, I would say. It will be fun and it will be enjoyable as everything we do, but also a serious working session. And I hope that when we finish, we're closer to build alliances and coalitions with everyone here in the room. Okay, with that, I would like to pass it to Barjan Polman that has been curating all these series.
Thank you, Andres. Hello everyone, and welcome to all of you to the very first coalition. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bartjan Polman. I direct exhibitions and public programs here at the school. So central to the public programming this year, it was already mentioned by the dean, is rather than totalizing strategies, we feel what is urgently needed right now is a sort of choreography of dispersed interventions, which we label under the sort of larger rubric of coalitions. So the public programming this year is really meant to serve as a platform, let's say, for the creation of alliances. And in the spirit of alliances, this takes on multiple forms, and tonight's event is one of these, and there will be several others. There will be other coalitions and other events throughout the fall and spring semester. So this is one, coalition one, the coalition of collectives. We thought it makes sense to start with actual collectives. And these coalitions as a series, they're really meant sort of as vehicles to bring together people who work in similar disciplinary frameworks and to combine their shared knowledge and expertise around specific forms of practice. And while a new format. It should also be seen in the context, it was already mentioned, of rethinking the public programming as we've been doing these past couple of years and finding ways of how to discuss the built environment now. First with affirmations, which was really meant to sort of affirm individual positions and dissent and possible futures, and last year's actioning summits, which discussed specific methodologies around key issues, bringing together expert knowledge from various disciplines. So again, there are several more coalitions coming this fall and spring, but this very first one, the Coalition of Collectives, I'm very excited to welcome representatives of three collective practices: the Floating Museum with Faheem Majeed, sitting right here, Raumlabor with Benjamin Foerster-Baldenius, and Espace Aygo, who sort of miraculously, they were all in New York at this moment already, so they're all here. I'll introduce you all in detail in a second. And I'm also super excited to have Joseph, Zeal-Henry, and Mireia Luzzárraga, who will offer the sort of first responses to this conversation that will be about to unfold. So we'll first hear from Faheem, then Benjamin, then Salome and Line from Espace Aygo, and then they will be joined by Sijmen and Jaime, also from Espace Aygo, later for the Q&A. And then Joseph will ask the first question, Mireia, Joseph, Mireia, and then we'll open it up to the audience at large. So extensive biographies are online. I'm just going to give a quick, brief snippet of everybody's incredible resume, which is much longer. But Faheem Majeed is an artist, curator, educator, and non-profit administrator whose practice centers around collaboration and institutional critique to engage communities in meaningful dialogue. He's the co-founder and co-director and founder of the Floating Museum, which of course many of us know from as a curator at large of the last Chicago biannual. And the Floating Museum is a Chicago-based arts collective reimagining relationships between art, community, and public institutions. And his work has been exhibited at MCA Chicago, Centre Pompidou, the High Line, Hyde Park Center, many places, and is the recipient of major awards, including the John Mitchell Foundation and the Joyce Foundation. Benjamin Foerster-Baldenius is a performing architect and member of the collective Raumlabor Berlin, whose 9 members are wielding in many artistic fields to generate new, contemporary and sustainable concepts of urban praxis. With Raumlabor, he founded the amazing Floating University, which I guess I'm sure we all know, really incredible, that won the Golden Lion at the Venice Architecture Biannual in 2023. He teaches in varying roles, most recently, and I love this, as the first professor of cohabitation, is that right? The professor of cohabitation and vice rector at the Frankfurt University of the Arts. And last but definitely not least, Espace Aygo is a collective of 4 artists and designers. Sijmen Vellekoop, who's sitting right there, Murken, right there, Jaime Le Bleu, and Salome Sperling, who conduct a sort of radical domestic experiment in their house, Marteau, in Brussels, which is a house, a workshop, a stage, and a manifesto, as they describe, all at once, in which each object has been created by hand in a kind of Gesamtkunstwerk, let's say. As they declare, to make is not only to shape matter, but also to shape existence itself through rituals, relationships, and ways of being in the world. So in the spirit of collectives and alliances and coalitions, together, as a collective, they cultivate a shifting ecosystem of practices, each piece a fragment of a larger conversation about how we might live differently, more consciously, more playfully, and more beautifully. So last but not least, Joseph and Mireia respondents. Joseph is a distinguished designer, curator, and urbanist whose multidisciplinary career spans cultural planning, urban design, and public service, and he's currently director of cultural planning for the city of Boston, as well as a teaching studio this fall here at GSAPP. Mireia is, of course, part of TAC, the amazing architecture studio, but also, of course, an assistant professor and coordinator of the Core 1 sequence here at GSAPP. So with that, I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to declare this first coalition as officially open. So Faheem, please.
Hi, can you hear me okay? This is nice. Hi, everybody. My name is Faheem Majeed. I'm one of 4 members of the Floating, well, that's not true. I'm one of 4 co-directors, co-founders of the Floating Museum. And admittedly, I'm not here with my collective, so I'm like 1/4. So if you had each of us up here, you would get a very different presentation based on our skill sets, interests. So I'm gonna talk a little today about our org. I'll talk a little bit about my experience getting into the collective, or kind of helping co-found that, and then tactics. So here we go. Also, I talk a lot, so what I decided to do is actually show a short 5-minute, 4-minute video that'll get us up to date really fast, much faster than if I just rambled. So I think,
My name is Faheem Majeed.
I'm Andrew Shackman.
Avery R. Young.
Jeremiah Holsabeth Spofford, and I'm a director. Director.
A librarian. No.
One of Floating Museum's missions is to transform the city of Chicago into a museum campus.
Thinking about the city as a network, all kinds of infrastructure, which can be rethought as a series of cultural platforms that institutions and organizations and artists can leverage.
There's an idea that the art and the culture is in the city and not necessarily limited to the walls of institutions.
Last year, we put on an exhibition called River Assembly, where we floated a 100-foot barge down the Chicago River. River Assembly presented a model for transforming the river into a space of cultural activation. We had a number of artists, organizations, and partnering institutions come with us on that journey.
So we're working on moving from the river to floating on the train. We're doing a project called Cultural Transit Assembly.
We're in conversations with the Chicago Transit Authority to activate Chicago's Green Line.
But you could literally jump on the train for $2.50 and have a sort of museum experience.
There's different shows happening throughout the city. So there's a show that's popping up in Austin. There's a show in Garfield. There's an inflatable that's an exhibition. Thinking about, once again, getting closer to our mission of neighborhoods as galleries and spreading resources and connecting those neighborhoods in interesting ways.
True core of culture in any city is within its people.
We're really talking about floating as a ways in which to engage space and actually using space as the material.
Well, the goal is to think about how you would transform that space, not just for us to make a gesture. It's really a network between existing artists, our infrastructure, municipal authorities, and that only deepens your relationship with your own city. We engineer new infrastructure so that the city could engage in certain kinds of cultural production that it wasn't able to engage in before our installation.
This is a practice where the impossible is engaged.
All right. So these are the 4 directors. We introduce ourselves in the video. I think part of the reason why we're here is we also curated the Chicago Architecture Biennial, the 5th edition of that. The 6th edition is just opening now, and we actually work with Lucia in the Buell Center and Adwo as well in curating them in the exhibition. They actually had an amazing piece. But I'd be remiss not to talk about our most recent. So the video you just saw goes up about 2019. My partners would be like mortified because it was kind of long and doesn't even talk about what we recently worked on. After the architecture biennial, we took time to kind of turn inwards. We became an org. It was a passion project. We're all educators. We come out of that. But this most recently is a work that we just unveiled that has to do with called Mecca Flats, or for Mecca. And it has to do with a housing complex that was built during the World's Fair in the late 1800s at a site which is now IIT, and the Crown Hall, if you're familiar with that building, was actually built on its foundations. So we just recently, we brought in a partner. Oftentimes in our formulas, it's not just us, it's actually a network. We call it Floating Family. We bring in lead artists to work within our collective together, become a member. This is Skyla Sinsari. She's a archivist and founded an organization called the Blackivist, which thinks about Black archives and community-based archives as well. So we've been working with her for about a year to think about an archive that goes with this installation, which is kind of a mashup of photographs dealing with kind of architecture, spaces where culture was kind of founded and created. So like, or gospel music, Pilgrim Baptist Church, or the Regal Theater, but also this is our first inflatable to actually have an interior as well, where we're curating images over a course of time. So we just finished this, we just launched this very recently, and in the background you see Crown Hall, so it's kind of like in dialogue with this very important infrastructure, and it's kind of like a ghost coming back. So we thought, it's no coincidence after Architecture Biennial, our next piece was a building, in essence. So here's just some premieres of this, and we haven't even programmed this yet. This was a 2-day event where we invited our friends and people who support us to come out and celebrate. So in the very same way, there was performances and things like that as well. So just sharing some of that, that's very hot off the presses. But I also just want to talk a little bit about how I got to that point. So this is Southside Community Arts Center. It was founded in the late 1930s. It's part of the WPA, Works Administration and Federal Arts Project. And so that's a whole history. This whole thing is very close, near and dear. I actually became, as a young 20-year-old, an executive director of this organization, which started to inform my practice. I'm in the middle, kind of. I would hit the laser pointer, but I'm not going to do that because I've been warned it'll blow up the whole thing. So just kind of like, this is Margaret Burroughs. She was in the front, sitting down in front with all these people behind her. She is an institution in herself. She was a young 20-something-year-old when the organization was founded. Across the street where she eventually lived, she founded the first museum of African American history in the world out of a call to educate her kids, educate her students, because the curriculum was not diverse. They wouldn't change it. So she, like Thanos did, and just said, I'll do it myself. And so she just started teaching her kids in her home. The community called it a museum. So then she had to make a choice. Okay, now I need to go learn about museum practices and how it fits my community. We call that the Burroughs algorithm. It's a design kind of idea where input is first. So as you learn, you have to be willing to step away from the original design and take in the spaces. If you actually engage with those spaces, are you willing to let go of what you design and alter physically, the form, everything, down to the program? This is a building. This is our most recent, one of our recent initiatives. This is called the Burroughs Residency Program. This is the house or the coach house where she lived when she founded the first Museum of African American History. So it's kind of really great. There are a lot of smiling faces. We have a lot of fun. This was a passion project to begin. We didn't know we would be an organization 10 years later. So it's just evolved. And now I'm starting to see how, you know, kind of nimble museums become big institutions and departments and everything else. So we're kind of going through a growth moment. But this is actually the Floating Museum. This is our immediate kind of collective. This is our staff, our friends, people we've grown with, people that make all of this very possible. So I'd be remiss not to share that. Getting into tactics a little bit, we have a couple like great catchphrases. You know, we talk about we work with and not for, right? So what that means is when we go into a neighborhood or a space, we actually identify who's doing the work. I had to correct some of our funders very early on to say, we don't bring arts to the community. The art is already there. The idea is to identify who is doing the art, right? There's creativity in every space on this probably planet, someone doing something, usually not getting support, usually not getting recognition. So we try to identify those people. This is a piece from a show we had. You saw some of it in the video, but we call these lions. The name of the show is A Lion for Every House. But these are people who protect, who advocate, who come with community, who put their work in. That's kind of the premise of that exhibition, A Lion for Every House. These are the people we work with. These are our extended families all over the city that we think about. These are the people who put input in. We can't work with every community, but we can work and support the people who are working in that community, which has a multiplier effect. We have limitations, and things grow or things stay still. These are the people we work with over our course of our 10 years, right? And so we also try to another tactic, we try to identify what's already there. It's not about bringing something, it's identifying something that's there and then saying, hey, can we work with you? What are you working on? Would you like a 30-foot inflatable? Some people say yes, right? They're like, sure, you know, how much does this cost? It all costs nothing. And then we're also gonna put money on the guitar player to play at the bar too. So we do through funding as well. Once again, it's like, well, what do I have to do this? Well, Ms. Jenkins, you've been doing a community festival for the past 10 years, 20 years out of your pocket. You kind of owe this. We owe you this. So we're just going, you don't have to do nothing. Go get some shoes. Go get a hat if you want. You can do whatever you want to do with this money. So those are generally who we try to identify and work with. But with and not for, that's what that means. And sometimes some people don't want a 30-foot inflatable. Sometimes they just want you to sit down and eat a hot dog because not everybody wants to be seen, right? Especially now, you know? So we have that conversation and we're willing to like shift or let go, right? So once again, a lot of these images, you'll see the inflatables or the exhibitions in the background, which is the point. And they're exhibits. They come, many of my students, we're all teachers and educators, they become docents that facilitate dialogue and conversation. Most times they're learning more than they're actually teaching. The point is to be an active listener, right? So this is when I kind of talk about extended family and floating family. Those 4 co-directors are just people who kind of started out the beginning. But depending on the project, the ownership, the authorship, the way it moves, the way it functions, shifts. So these are just, I kind of end on this kind of image because these are people that we've worked with and that show up for us and vice versa, we show up for them. And, you know, Floating Museum, as I said in the video, is the city, you know, and there's big institutions in that city and small community orgs in that city. And oftentimes they miss each other. Due to space, budget, time. And as people in our own studio practices or, you know, teaching practice often move in between these spaces, we started to think about what if there was a connector? What if we could think about a connector? It's not a counter model to a museum or an institution. It's an adjacent model that benefits both that institution, because we can be nimble and work with them. In the case of having an exhibition at the Art Institute, we were able to actually get copies of the exhibition and walk them out the front door. Now, how you do that, it's a long process, but it can be done, and that's another presentation. Versus the community organization that is dealing day to day. They're under $200,000 a year. They don't have the capacity to do training. They don't have the capacity to do like many things other than respond to what's coming through the door on any given day. So sometimes when those two organizations kind of interact, they miss each other. And yeah, so oftentimes we think about that, and yeah, that's what we bring to the table. So I look forward to talking, and thank you so much. Point at the TV. You're down there.
Sound, I think. Here it is. Sorry. Maybe I drink a bit. Are you okay? Are you ready to dive into? It's not so different in the end what I'm going to say. I mean, maybe I use different words, but actually I'm describing very similar processes, I think. I have different images, though. Now, which one is? It's probably the right one that is forward, right? Yeah, and I see it here. That's a bit tricky. I have to move a little bit forward, and then I have my text here. Just in the beginning, because it's only 20 minutes, I have to be very fast. So, hi, I'm Benjamin. I'm part of a collective. I'm a bit jealous because they came with a whole collective. But I couldn't bring my 8 colleagues along, but they're at home, and I understand. It's good. It's super. Same with you. Okay, so Raumlabor, 9 people, and I thought when I was invited and talk about collectivity and coalitions and so forth, I thought that, and then in the end, cohabitation, because that was mentioned in the beginning. That's a term I'm dealing with now. I had to go a little bit more backwards before my actual work period, and that is 1968. That's the year when I was born. Maybe there, somewhere in this universe. And the first groups that were surrounding me was, of course, my family. How does this work? Here. That's a tricky thing. So I was surrounded by my family, which was, I guess, my first collective experience. Shortly after, I was dropped in kindergarten with other kids and grown-ups taking care of us, and then they sent me to school. I wouldn't call a school class a collective because it's kind of a forced community, but it brought us together. And for the next 13 years, I practiced social behavior 5 days a week in this context. In the beginning of the 80s, I entered lots of very different types of groups: classical music, martial arts. I tried out different church activities in groups, and I also began my career as a political activist. I think you can say I was, and probably still am, a very groupy person. And there's others, right? I mean, not everybody likes to be together with others in this kind of context. Yeah, and then, By the end of my school time, I'm still in my hometown, Hamburg. My interest shifted a little bit into group activities with artistic expression. Even the Violent Free Action Group was also more a performative collective. We were standing in front of new supermarkets that we didn't like and looked grimly at the people, at the consumers going there. And then I moved to study in Berlin in 1989. Now, who is a little bit acquainted with German history knows 1989 is an interesting moment, a historic date for the city. The wall came down, the first Gulf War started. There were not enough apartments for us students, so the squatter movement was revitalized, and I was in the middle. But even though these activities had more or less permanent members, as action groups, I would not call these groups collectives. I think collectives need more than sharing one opinion, one enterprise, one sports, one taste, or a collective is really a lot more complex. There's more questions coming in. So the first group I was part of that I would call a collective was a house project. 25 people trying to renovate a house in East Berlin and live together. One kitchen, a complete ruin, and we lived on the construction site and made everything not as nice as you will see. But still, it was a big collective effort. These were more than 10 years of very straightforward experiments in planning, building, and cooking together, and first and foremost, inventing formats of care for each other, for the house, for the neighborhood, and so on. And here are some images. This is the house, the blue house behind the forest on stilts. Oh no, here. Thank you. This is because they don't have a Mac, right? But no problem. No problem. So the blue house is the house project, 25 people. Besides the dream to organize our domestic life in a radically different way as a commons with biofood and shared responsibilities, we looked for sustainable building methods, and we opened up our front yard to the public and created a kind of a radical playground that we called the Institute of Applied Building Arts. One day, it was a flea market. The next day, it was a swimming pool. Everyone could come up with an idea, and we could help realizing it. I think I've heard that before. So, and compared to the collective of housing projects, the theater collective that I was part of was my first mobile intervention unit. It was a performative approach to activate spaces in the city and make them public. We opened up bars, clubs, casinos. This is the casino, dance schools, and even a stock exchange. We performed on demonstrations, and of course, we played theater. What made this group a collective was the shared responsibility. So we were really shifting roles in that. Sometimes I was writing the text, and somebody else was making the space, and sometimes I was making the space, and somebody else was the director, and so on. You can see me there in the back with my Rasta Farai dress. At the end of the century, the term Raumlabor appeared, a group of ex-architecture students sharing a space in central Berlin. And when we started this, we weren't at all thinking that this was a project that had any kind of future. We just had a space that's not on the image. This is actually a photo taken in front of the space with a Photoshop landscape behind it. But what we did was we used our 90s Berlin experiences to drop ideas in the environment around us throughout the past, from now 26 years. We grew from a collective to what I would call more a social ecosystem. We worked together in different constellations, yet never formed an official business, never had a share. So we are not directors. There's a difference. We are not directors. We are all just part of this group. We're friends, we're members, maybe, whatever. But we don't share a bank account. We never discussed what our collective future could be. We shared a space to stick around and let each other look over the shoulder, exchange topics, strategies, and tactics, and copy them as much as we want. Our being a group was less and less just focused in a closed number of members, and more there were people with other expertise, mindsets, and charisma, taste, or belief becoming part of our project teams. That's, yeah. Every project opened up a new constellation of coalitions. This is what I would call a coalition. New people, other groups joining in, experts in various fields, and thus we started to create our own universe of collective working environments. It became much more than just a bunch of weirdos making eco-interventions in urban space. We began to play an active role in a wide network that already existed or that was growing, of all kinds of groups and formats that form micro-laboratories for urban practice. That's why I prefer to talk about cohabitation in the field of spatial ecology when it comes to Raumlabor's work now. It was not always like that. In the process of creating spaces of encounter of these communities of practice, there appeared also a new form of project on the horizon. Projects that combine artistic research with activism in a long-term perspective. And that's something that you mentioned as well, that, after a while you get a little bit bored by this kind of breathless one project after the other, but you want to build up something, or you want things also to last or evolve or change. These projects need a different political network, a standing within the city administration to give a home for more permanent communities to stick around. And they also need a different involvement from our side. So our job description, once again, changed more radically than before. And one of them, and that's now my example, one of them is my project example today. You might have heard of it. It's called the Floating University. It's well known, and I think I presented it last time also here, but I thought that I'd just do it again because it fits very well into the... I could have taken any other project, but this one is really leading towards the, it's making this kind of arch in my thesis from the beginning, from collective to cohabitation. It's located in a man-made crater in the center of Berlin. In this plan, it's on one of the round shapes up there, the left one. The shape indicates a storm water basin for the water that falls on the sealed surface of the first Berlin airport of Tempelhof. It was opened up in the 20s. Here in the center, that part was but then they didn't need a stormwater basin because it was all grass. The aeroplanes landed on grass. Only in the 40s, with the monumental extension that the airport needed, because it was supposed to become the airport of basically nothing less than the center of the world, called Germania, that luckily never came, but the airport did, and it needed a lot of sealed surfaces, so a lot of aeroplanes. Yeah. War aeroplanes. 1939 to 45, this is the production line of Junkers 87 bombers inside the airport. The factory had the biggest Berlin forced labor camp and the first German concentration camp connected to it. But I would love to talk more about this topic, but it's not really what I'm invited for. So, but the horrific killing machine that we Germans build up, that we should be ashamed of and are still ashamed of until the end of time. But the mission I'm here for is to talk about collectivity and collective efforts. So I come back to the gutter. And this is an image from the end of the 50s, where you see the gutter that leads the the rainwater, to the place that I will talk about. In the middle here, the thing that is a little bit wet, there's a grill, and then along there is a pipe that is 2-meter diameter that collects the water and brings it into the floating university. What we actually see here is a very important collective effort. That is the airlift that was installed in 1948 when the Russian military government closed Berlin up, and it had to be fed for more than a year through the air, with around 1,000 aeroplanes landing per day on this airport and 2 other smaller ones. So back to the gutter. This is the blue spot is where we're going now. This is the rainwater basin that the floating university is in. And it's great. It's a place that sometimes has water and sometimes doesn't have water. And it's coming in, and it's a funny ecosystem that has to deal with this kind of wetness and dryness at the same time. So in 2018, actually in 2016, we decided to invade this space because of different dynamics happening in the city, especially all the real estate money after the big bank crash that we had just before, that was trying to go into the city of Berlin because it was the El Dorado of real estate. No other city was as cheap as that. And we knew that, and that the rents were rising. And then we had the referendum that the former Tempelhof Airport will become a park. And that meant that this piece of land is becoming one of the most valuable pieces of land in the whole city. And that's why we thought it's the time to put our foot in the door and come up with a concept to do something. And it was the same time that we had the 100-year Bauhaus anniversary in front of us. And whenever there's an anniversary in Germany, there's a big pot of money being put in the middle of the cultural scene, and you can apply to get it. And so we decided to apply for it, and to make it short, we got the money, and they even gave us the key to build up this kind of archigram-like structure in the middle, and we called it the Floating University because we thought it's good to have a place to learn and unlearn, and where we can come together with all these community that I was describing before to exchange about different forms of urban practice. And since then, we're running this place. So here you see it without water, and here, I put this picture for you. There was a workshop that TAC made with us and with people that wanted to take part. And this is actually, it was a very important inspiration also for me, because this was the first interspecies meeting place that was installed there, the pink thing. We had a little bit problems getting rid of it afterwards, but it's not there anymore. And here you see the auditorium with a pool in the middle, with like different people talking to us. There were lots of different experiments from different university groups or other groups that came and tried out to make fire by hand. We had activists coming here from Extinction Rebellion. We built a bicycle track for the young people of the neighborhood, because in between or before it became a rainwater retention, it was actually a bicycle race area. And we opened up something that is also still running. It's the Children University. The kids walk around in the mud and collect whatever they find and write stories about that. That was the start. Now it's also changing. They discover the water. And here you see a little bit, the water is actually quite contaminated. I mean, contamination is always difficult to see. It comes also from the street, it comes from the airport, it comes from the roofs, so there's all kinds of shit in it. I think I have an image here, yes. This is just after a big rain. You have cigarette bumps. In Berlin, you're still allowed to smoke everywhere. And then they are spilled into the basin, and nicotine is the most difficult toxication of the water that is really hard to get out. Anyways, we tried all kinds of systems in our water laboratory to clean the water, to filter the water, to make it better, and it all had to be in a way that people can see that it is actually a great effort, and we manage, but not quite, right? I mean, because we are not a clarification company, but we showed that there is an effort to make, and we tried. This is the laboratory of Catherine Ball, an artist who just released a book of her work that she did in the Floating University around water and water filtration. That's her. Here you see our toilet system with the rainwater that you can put in these kind of gardening cans and then flush inside the toilets. And then, of course, the rainwater also came from time to time, because it is still a functioning stormwater basin. So sometimes everything's flooded, and then we have to clean everything again. But it's also part of that. It's part of showing that it is actually raining still sometimes. And then what happens when it rains? And then the rainwater gets collected, and then it's sent into the river, and we're not using it for anything. So that was 2018, and since then we have changed the situation lots of times. This is 2019, actually. We didn't have any money anymore, so we had to reduce. We had to give back all the scaffolding to the scaffolding company, and we built this iceberg. But still, also that was very nice to concentrate. Also to think, we started to build an association that is taking over the responsibility for this vast piece of land. And this needed also some time to form an association with a group of random people to find out, what are the roles, what is our task, what do we need to do. And then we came out with a third iteration that you see in this image. It looks a bit like this. There's the kitchen on the right. There's still a kitchen. There's still a bar. There's still an auditorium. There's still lots of different forms of artistic, performative things happening. Not so many exhibitions, more really readings and performances and discussions and university seminars and so forth and so forth. And then, that's a new part that I didn't show last time. This happened. Because we don't own this land, right? It's still part of the airport real estate administration. And we're sitting in the gutter, the rainwater gutter of this place. So they have the role to take over the maintenance. And at some point, they didn't like us so much. That is another part. At least the technicians, we were getting a little bit on their nerves with our people in there and our constructions, and that was all a bit difficult for them, I think. And so when there was a moment when they thought that the water was more contaminated than before, they said, it all has to go. So they came with big machines and removed all the reeds, the whole ecosystem was basically taken away, and we were left alone with our building. So they pushed it together, put it into skips, and then brought it to the next, wherever. I don't know where they brought it. And what we did in this moment was we tried to save as much of the material, the natural material that was there. And that was really the first time that we thought, we have to take care of this ecosystem and find a way to I don't know, heal it maybe after this catastrophe, which was for, we have 50 people in the association. We were all standing there, and we couldn't do anything. And then, so we collected some of the trees and a little bit of the reeds, and we put it into our structure because they couldn't remove our structure. The structure was still there. And that's what it looks like now. That's a photo from last week. So it's actually coming back, and very fast. And this is only happening because we made a big fuss out of it. We made a big political scandal. There was the district environmental authority was like, they weren't asked, so they were counting the frogs before in that basin, and now all the frogs were gone. And they were counting the birds. They were sending something that they call the city rangers, like on a daily basis to count species and so on, was all gone. They were looking at us and saying, you're not allowed to walk in the water anymore because you might step on a frog. And then they came with these big machines and removed everything. So then finally the big brother got a little bit, hit on the fingers, and we were allowed to contain the water. And so since that happened, we're still not allowed to walk in the water. So this photo is, again, 2018. But this is what we are going for. And this is what this is the end of my presentation. But what I see in this image is really a new form of practice, a new kind of an idea of what these spaces that we have in the city could be. And this practice of putting on rubber boots and walking in 10 centimeters of filthy water with algae, it's such an... Right, Mark? You did it. It's so nice to walk, and you have that Jesus feeling. And you feel enlightened. And then you can talk with people, and while you do that, and you really get new ideas, and I think that's what we need. So, thank you very much. Sorry. That is, maybe just to mention that. This is the structure, the human structure that we've built up. So this is a plan from a mapping from 2022, more or less, where we try to organize us as an association. But what's completely missed out, and then the situation that I just showed came after, is like, how do we relate to our surrounding, and how do we relate to our environment? And so I think we'll have to work on that. I'm not sure that it's graphically possible to do that, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.
No, it was perfect. Oh. Okay, yours is working. Mine also. Or? Can you hear me? Yeah. Huh? We will. We're fine. Sure. Okay, hello everybody. So when we were invited to give this lecture, we were also asked to choose only one of us to represent all four. But that's really not the way we work. We're always together. So today we will make these guys jealous, and we will be two of us to speak, still representing all four. So if you get confused of if you heard from 1, 2, or 3 people, don't be worried because we're also a bit confused. Yeah.
So, Espace Aygo is a collective of 4 artists and designers, Jamie, Sijmen, Line, and me. And today we're going to talk about Marteau, which is our first experiment. And it's not only our home, but it's also our workshop, a stage, and a manifesto in itself.
So here we live amongst the things that we make, and with every gesture we confirm that design is ontological. To make things is not only to shape matter, but also to shape the conditions of living, like Bart said, like all of our rituals, our relationships, and our way of being in the world. And Espace Aygo is not only ours alone, it's a space of exchange and where our fellow designers and artists work, enter into dialogue with our own, and creating a bigger conversation about how we might live differently.
So we ask a lot of questions, and why a house is because it was the closest way to experiment on ourselves. How can architecture move beyond fixed family roles to nurture more fluid and vibrant identities? On this picture, you see our living room, and on the left, the pink wall is Grotto, is the first collective work that we did in the house, and it was aiming to disrupt ornament and square architecture, but it became a cave, and it set the tone for the full living room. We wanted to make a landscape, so the couch is the sea, Grotto is the cave, and the grass is the carpet. The carpet is the grass. How can domestic space serve as a foundation for practicing new ways of relating to one another? Well, here is the ceiling of our other living room. Our friend Klaartje van Essen, she's a painter, a Dutch painter. After coming a few times to the house, she was just like, I really want to put a paste of me in this house. So she ended up sitting on our faces. And underneath is a chandelier called Sustainable Space Economy, because a bit like space waste, we had a lot of unfinished projects in the atelier, and Jamie made it into a chandelier. How can objects disrupt the predefined patterns of how we live and who we become? This is our dining setting that we have in our kitchen, and the aim was to disrupt the formality of dining. We disrupt a lot of things. Or we aim at least, like the putting cutlery around the table. It's so like, and in this sense, it goes up to the lamp, magnetized. It's a bit like plucking the apple from the tree.
So living in Marteau has allowed us to test these questions on a daily basis and to try and answer them together. And we use fiction as a method to create worlds. Because when you realize that everything that make up our reality is actually fictions that we collectively believe in or do not agree with, you can also realize that by creating your own fictions becomes a very empowering and liberatory tool. So yeah, here you see an image of our kitchen. It's located in the basement. It's normally very dark. This is just a very good picture. It is a big window looking out to our very overgrown garden. So when we first entered, we really got the feeling of the hobbits from the Lord of the Rings. So on that notion, we sort of questioned further what it would be like if the hobbits went through an industrial revolution. And then we played with this idea as we went along creating this kitchen. And this is just one method that we use for this room. It's very different throughout the whole house, how each room came to be.
At first, the workshop was in the house, which meant that every object that we would make, we could directly place into the room that they would end up being. It was really like living and creating like simultaneously. And we kind of became the rats and the scientist at the same time, like the subject and the observer, which made the house become our perfect laboratory. And because of this, the house is alive with process, a lot of trial and a lot of error. And invention is born from necessity and imagination. None of this could have been done alone. That's clear. We complete each other in very unexpected ways. Even at the beginning, when we started the project, friends of ours hated being around us because they didn't understand anything we would say. But for us, a mumble is enough. So that's great.
So our connection was there from the start, but it was never seamless harmony. Friction is definitely a part of collectives and also the ego. In the beginning, very naively, we wanted to completely erase ego, have no structure, no rules, but quite quickly learned that ego should not be erased and you should have rules. And the ego is the pulse of the collective. It's the sort of spark for collisions that sort of generate new ideas and makes the outcome different. And ego also hides in the sort of invisible labor, the cleaning and the organizing and the caretaking. And these sort of layers, they don't ask for hierarchy, but for acknowledgement. A reminder that invisible labor sustains visible creation. And in this way, the ego sort of became our teacher. And what we have learned or came to realize is that collectivity is not the absence of self, but rather the weaving together of selves, sort of bound by trust into a common fabric. And here you see an image of the sink of our bathroom with an excessively long tap, which it even extends out of the picture. This was, we had a lot of shower hoses lying around that we had probably found in a scrapyard, connected them together, and it ended up being a very functional sink because you can fit any bottle underneath or whatever you might want to do with it. Behind it, you have one of many curtains that we like to see as paintings for the neighbors.
Here you see a picture of a table that we made after an attempt of getting funding, and we didn't get funding, but we spent 4 months writing all together and being on the computer. And we're like, it's impossible. We have such different ways of working around a table. We're all very active people. So we made this table with the idea that one can be standing, people can be sitting around the table, but you can also lay on it. And then here it's a zoom of Grotto that was showed a bit before. And this is an incredibly beautiful montage I made about our living room. So we've been working together for now 4 years. And because of that, now we're really trying to create new ways of collaborating. This project is called Cadavrexki, and it's our take on the Cadavrexki of the Surrealist, the paper drawing. So two of us started with the bottom of the cabinet. It's in our kitchen. Two of us started with the bottom of the cabinet. One of us did the middle one. The other one, I did the painting, and then all of the final touches were left back to the 2 first ones.
And this way of working, this way of working shows something quite essential to collective processes, and that is that authorship becomes shared and porous, and no one truly controls the outcome, and the object itself becomes independent in a way.
So we live and we work together. But, sorry, we choose every day to do. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Every day we choose to do this. It's intense, but we do. And for us, this overlap is super essential because it means that any idea can come out of the most ridiculous places in the house. One can be coming out of the shower, the other one is on the toilet, and conversation starts. It goes from anywhere. And the house is alive with these collisions, Of course, it also means a lot of intensity, being 24/7 all together, it's a lot. But that's why we're also understanding that the individual is very important. So we each made our own bedrooms with everything that entails, what you want to wake up in the morning, what color, what material. But we also made our bathroom together, obviously, and it became our second living room. The door is always open, and yeah, this is me peeing.
And smoking cigarettes.
And smoking a cigarette at once. Yeah, this is Lina's room. This is Simon's room. This is Jamie and me room. This is the bathroom again, with all of us inside.
Doing everything together. So yeah, Marteau, that we've been talking about today, the house where we live in, is coming to an end, unfortunately. The landlord had decided to turn the house into overpriced apartments, which means that we need to get out, and we're gonna try and sell all the work that we have done inside, because yes, we do need to make a living. But all the rest, the paintings on the walls, the endless conversations about which color a door should have, the 250 books shredded into pulp for the grotto wall installation will all be gone and erased. And when a place is replaced by profit, it's just not the walls that disappears, it's also the freedom to imagine, to live differently, and to create without compromise. And with that, I would like to add that erasure is never neutral, whether of houses, histories, and never of people.
Collectives are collisions between egos, discipline, and also just simple ways of being. We all create from the stories that we carry, childhood experiences that still shape us till we're dead. And wherever we go next in Aygo, whatever second experiment, we guess we're gonna do a second experiment and probably 15 after that, but wherever the second experiment will be, the essence will remain, the courage to experiment together, and the search of freedom to imagine. And I will end with a reminder that because we're seeking for freedom, no one is free until everybody is.